From pain, from an emotional, um, from an emotional place. I mean, writing a novel isn't a practical, logical thing to do at all. I mean, at least not in my case. What happens with me is that something's bothering me, or I'm feeling alienated or isolated, or I have questions about things that are bothering me, and that those feelings begin to form an idea for a novel. And I guess that's because that's the only way I can, or that's the way I like to express myself in an artistic way. Um, and so what happens, like for example, with Imperial Bedrooms, I had reread Lesson Zero, and I was thinking about where Clay was now. And I was also going through a lot of other stuff in my life that was kind of painful and confusing. And these two things came together, the idea of where this character was now that I'd written about 20 years ago and what was going on in my life at that point. And then I started to have a lot of questions about that character. And this went on for a year. So the process begins without writing anything for about a year, where I'm just walking around asking questions about this character and what's going on in his life. And then I start to make notes, and then I start to answer some of those questions, and then those notes form into an outline, and then that outline turns into a novel. And that has been my process for just about every book that I've written. I know the last line of the book before I actually begin the book. Yes, I know the first line, I know the last line. And, you know, the idea, I've talked about an outline a lot throughout my career, and I've talked about how the outlines are often very massive and twice as long as the texts themselves. And I guess I should just be calling those, you know, first drafts in a way, because a lot of the novel is in there, but there's also a lot of other things in there. There are questions that are written in the margins, and I answer those questions. And then there are examples of how a paragraph should look. And then a note of all the things that this narrator wouldn't notice, and that I might notice, or you might notice if we were in that scene. But for example, someone like Clay in Imperial Bedrooms, who's this kind of entitled, raging narcissist, would never notice. He wouldn't notice that detail in the corner. He wouldn't say that thing. He wouldn't overhear that line of dialogue. And so all of that, the reader doesn't need to see. What the reader needs to see, more or less, is this very pared down version of that outline. And so that's kind of a big part of the process, is taking this very emotion-based outline, and then I come in as the cool technician and in a very neutral way try to take this outline and shape it into the context of a novel. It depends on my mood. It depends on where I'm at in the novel. It depends on how well I'm feeling that day. It depends on a lot of things. As the novel gets closer to completion, the days get longer, and I get more revved up, and I'm more excited. But the whole process I find very intriguing and very fun, and I look forward to working on a novel because it takes me out of, you know, my mundane real life, and it takes me away from, you know, the pain of the everyday in a way. And I don't understand, you know, the idea of a writer sitting at his desk moaning about the fact how hard it is to write a novel. Yeah, it can be a tricky and difficult thing to do, but it should always, you know, be interesting to you and something that you are excited about. It shouldn't be something you complain about at all, but which a lot of writers tend to do. It's not like method acting, you know. It's not like it's not like you become these characters while you're writing them. I mean, to a degree you do. I mean, I told people, for example, when I wrote American Psycho, that I became Patrick Bateman while I was working on the book. But that's true to a degree because Patrick Bateman was based on me. And Patrick Bateman was based on my frustration and my loneliness and the isolation I was going through at that time in my life. And that's how that character was based. And so I did, yeah, sure, I lived with Patrick Bateman for 4 years or so. And I mean, I guess the same goes for Clay in Imperial Bedrooms. Yeah, it's a situation. The plot of Imperial Bedrooms is a situation and a milieu that I was part of to a degree. Of course, in the book it's heightened, and the book is also a bit of a Raymond Chandler neo-noir. But yeah, a lot of what Clay was feeling, I was empathic about. So yes, I have empathy for these dark characters, and they become darker because it's fiction. It's a made-up situation. They're made-up characters, but they do come from a place of pain, and they do come from a place of darkness. That does not mean, however, that I am an extremely dark dude who is walking around while I'm working on this book, you know, with a set of fangs and a cape and a really angry face, and I'm like, I want to kill people. So no, I mean, it's easy to slip in and out of it. I show my work to no one. The only person who sees my work after all the time I spend on it is my agent. She's the first person who reads the manuscript. I've never shown any manuscript to anybody except for Lesson Zero, which was being worked on while I was at college, and my professor at the time, Joe McGinnis, read a couple drafts of that book. But since then, no. And the reason is because, again, it's a personal thing. I mean, I'm not writing a novel to be accepted, and I'm not writing a novel for a consortium. I'm not writing a novel for an audience, and I'm not writing a novel for a reader. So this idea that you need to show your work to people and you need to get feedback and, oh, is this section working? I mean, I really want you to know. Paula, tell me, hey, Joe, what do you think about this? It just doesn't play a part in the process, because to me, it's my emotional journey in a way, and it's a very personal thing, and it doesn't even cross my mind to show the book to anybody.